Thank you everyone for joining this evening. We're commencing this with the first in a series of talks, largely revolving around the current exhibition Forever Changes, which is a selection of contemporary Nordic artists dealing with the subject of climate change. But in addition to that, we are joined by other artists involved in other strands of our programme, as well as guests throughout the sequence of events, which are all up on our website. Do check it out. As I say, this is the first of several. Kind of serendipitous, this one this evening, in terms of kicking off with Kotryna Ula Kiliulyte and Lasse Lecklin. Good evening to you both.
Hi.
Hi, good evening.
Yeah, so Lasse is in Helsinki, Kotryna, you're in Glasgow, yeah? So the two of you were or are recipients of an exchange residency that we, Street Level Photoworks, have undertaken with the Northern Photographic Centre in Oulu, and we'll be joined by Anthropocene, the current director of the centre, who will drop in after the presentations to say hello and perhaps ask a question or two. So, as well as that being a connecting feature of Scotland and Finland, Kotryna, her solo exhibition, Arctic Swell, is currently on at the Northern Photographic Centre in Oulu, which runs until February the 20th, if I'm not mistaken. Lasse's work is currently in Forever Changes, which runs until the 27th of February. So we'll hear from Lasse fairly soon, but we will kick off and I'll briefly introduce Kotryna. So Lasse, we will see you in 15 minutes or so if you want to go invisible.
Sure.
We'll see you very shortly. Kotryna, you have quite an impressive CV in recent years. So just to mention a few of these events and exhibitions that's occurred within that period of time. In 2017, you exhibited as part of the Edinburgh Art Festival, which is Impossible Colonies. You undertook a self-directed residency with the Photography Centre in Quebec City, another photography centre we have worked with in the past ourselves. That was in 2019. You undertook a residency in Marseille, which was leading up to an event, La Nuit de l'Instant, which involved projection works between Marseille and Glasgow, and the work that you made during that time was called The Cradle. Amateur Botanist was the work that I think followed on from that, and you had a screening of that particular work at the Curator's Workshop at the CCA in 2019, and also at EEP in Berlin. EEP is Eastern European Photography, and that's a gallery profiling artists from the slightly eastern side of Europe. You're going to talk or mention most of all of those projects, Kotryna, so I won't say much more about them. We can maybe come back on to who has supported Arctic Swell later on when it's relevant to do so, and maybe touch upon one or two other projects that hasn't been mentioned in that very, very brief introduction. So maybe if you would like to take the floor, as we say, and share your screen, thank you very much.
Okay, so I will start with a little bit of my previous work for those who are unfamiliar with it. I think I probably mark Amberum as my kind of first big project that then started my kind of quite intense career in making and working with lens-based media. So Amberum I started in 2014, and it then went on for a few years. It was my main project when doing masters at the Glasgow School of Art. Amberum was mainly a photographic project, and it mainly looked at the notion of nostalgia. It reflected a little bit on my personal experience of being a migrant. I moved to Scotland from Lithuania 15 years ago. So part of it was personal, but I was also looking at kind of wider collective nostalgia and also political implications of feeling nostalgia or using nostalgia as a political tool. And also touched upon kind of East-West divide in Europe specifically, and what was perceived as Eastern Europe and how nostalgia was felt in the so-called Eastern Europe. So I'm just showing a few slides here where there's different ways it's been exhibited before. This one being from street level photo works, and it's just a little fragment of kind of bigger display. It was when I started working with light boxes that you can see on the left. One of them is a photographic light box. Another one is made with Baltic Sea amber. And on the right, there's an audio piece and some archival photographs. The next body of work I'd like to mention quickly, and Malcolm has already mentioned, is Impossible Colonies. It was made for Edinburgh Art Festival for the platform programme for emerging artists. Impossible Colonies was a response to a historical utopian project that Lithuanian geographer Kazys Pakštas has proposed in between the First and Second World War. And it was, the proposal suggested that Lithuania as a nation buys or leases a piece of land in North or South America or Africa to kind of move part of the nation in case of political and armed conflict in Eastern Europe. He was seen as a lunatic by some, and also, but he had supporters, and he has gone to various places, including Quebec in Canada and São Paulo region in Brazil, also to the island of Madagascar, and have met with diplomats there trying to kind of take this project forward. So my work, Impossible Colonies, imagines an archive of these migrations that have never happened. And another, just very quick before I move on to Arctic Swell, is Amateur Botanist that Malcolm has mentioned as well. It's a video work, and I'm only going to show a couple of stills from it rather than screen it. It was work focusing on migrations, but specifically migrations of plants. And I had a bit of freedom doing this. It was kind of completely self-initiated work where I took various fruits and vegetables into rivers and lochs of Scotland and filmed them floating, then used a bit of photogrammetry. I'll talk about this later as well, about the photogrammetry technique to create these 3D renders of fruit and vegetables, and wrote a script of them talking to each other. So it was work that's maybe 6 minutes long, and for me to date was the most important piece of work I've made until Arctic Swell. So Arctic Swell is a result of the exchange residency, as Malcolm mentioned. That was called On the Edge. I went to Finland, mainly to Oulu, in early 2020, so just before the pandemic. And to be fair, I even had to cut my residency a bit short at the end by 2 or 3 days, because borders have begun to shut, and some airlines went bust very quickly. So yeah, I bought a train and a flight for next morning, and came back home, and I was right to do so because then the world had shut down. Whilst in Finland, I did a lot of filming, a lot of photographing. I spent the majority of my time in Oulu, a few days in Helsinki, and an amazing week in Arctic Lapland in the small village called Aska. I was collecting material mainly with kind of some ideas that I had in my head. And I was doing some writing in the kind of dark evenings because this was February and March. So yeah, there was not much daylight, and I had time to read and to write, and kind of started to build what Arctic Swell was to become a bit later. The main piece is a film. So Arctic Swell is mainly a film in 4 chapters. Chapters are called a dyad and a simple melody, atoms buzz like linden trees in July, a temporary organ, and gentle touch. I will show short excerpts from each of them just to give you a little bit kind of a taste and a feeling of each of them, and I will talk very shortly about each of them just to kind of outline the main ideas. So Dyad, chapter 1, looks into interconnectedness. Oh dear, if you can hear my baby crying, I'm sorry. All the doors are shut, but hopefully it's okay. So Dyad looks into interconnectedness and questions what is perceived as nature or natural and where humans stand in relation to it. I was using fragments of 3D rendered landscapes that were built from drone footage filmed in Arctic Finland, and it's also using voiceover text. So I feel like this chapter is an invitation into a meditative but slightly disturbing space where boundaries in between things and entities evaporate and objects shimmer. It's a fictional landscape, and it's kind of distorted, disorientating meditation on nature is an invitation to shrug off the anthropocentric clarity and know-it-all attitude. And let's have a look at it.
Astronomical object, celestial object, physical entity, association, structure, observable universe. Astronomy, object, body, astronomical body, celestial body, tightly bound, contiguous entity, astronomical, celestial object, complex, bound structure, tightly woven, object related, transformation, celebration, transition, relation.
Do you know that in this network we are a dyad, the loop of our needs, of what we have to give and what we wish to take, warmth, milk, feeling needed and loved, care and being cared for, the air and food we share, and when we both smile and we both cry, we are plugged into this network of other bacteria, the spores and molecules, digital devices, interhuman and transhuman relationships. As we entered this loop, you emerging from the pool of ideas and stars, me adapting, making space, opening up, we warped the mesh of time. Planets spinning round suns, long never-ending nights, leaves turning golden outside the ward. The trajectories have been ever so slightly skewed to place our dyad in this network, to allow every day feel the same, yet every moment is the first we are experiencing. We are each other's extensions into the world, and the surfaces and boundaries are not what they used to be. There is softness, vastness, light is made of liquid, and skin is made of air.
Celestial object, physical entity, association, structure, observable universe.
Okay, thank you. So this was chapter 1, and chapter 2, called A Simple Melody, Atoms Buzz Like Linden Trees in July, is a very different chapter. It looks into rituals of care and self-care and ways of looking after each other, and each other being not necessarily human, so of other beings, other animals or plants or other entities. The soundtrack for this was made by a Glasgow-based composer, Adriana Minu. I have sent her some sounds to make into a soundtrack, and the main idea was that this chapter is essentially a lullaby. It's a lullaby to calm a baby, to calm the singer themselves, or to calm the planet, and to deal with anxiety that we might all be feeling about climate change and climate catastrophe, I guess, that we're living in. The visuals, the filmed material is just very simple kind of everyday rituals of being in nature and of looking after each other. So it's food making and some gathering of herbs and being in the forest. So basically just very simple acts of caring and looking after one another. And I will play this now as well.
Gorgio, Gorgio, hoven, Gorgio, alos ma borni penio, alef ma benni lying there, alef ma benni lying there, to go and get the blackberries. Hoven, Gorgio, Gorgio, Gorgio. Hoven, Gorgio, alos ma borni penio, alef ma benni lying there, alef ma benni lying there, to go and get the blackberries. Hoven, Gorgio, Gorgio, Gorgio. Hoven, Gorgio, alos ma borni penio.
Thank you. And I'm going to share a tiny bit from chapter 3 as well, that is called Temporary Organ. Briefly, this chapter is about birth. I thought about birth as the most, I guess, the most universal human experience we can have. Everybody who is alive was born at some point. Some people also have given birth, and others have supported those who are giving birth. And I was reading about, talking of birth. Sorry about the sound. And I was reading a lot about it, and it struck me as quite a poetic idea that placenta is the only temporary organ that the human body will ever have. That it's a structure built there to sustain and to build new life, and then it is expelled. So this chapter speaks about kind of support structures, and about looking after each other, again, about interconnectedness, and also the kind of the emotions and the physical sensations and the physical reality being all much more connected than we think. For this chapter, I have collaborated with scientists from Denmark who have kindly lent me some video footage they produced in the lab, and the video footage that they produced is of cells contracting, mammary cells contracting upon injection of oxytocin. Oxytocin is a hormone of closeness and of love, and that's how mammals produce milk, by feeling close and loved, and that's how they can feed their babies. So I thought this was beautiful, another beautiful kind of analogy of how everything is quite connected.
And here's another perfect loop. Thought, chemistry of hormones and blood, solidity and softness of body, physical response, feeling of warmth and fullness, thought again. The air and roots and needles, the cycle of oxygen through lungs and blood vessels and leaves, a handful of snow slowly melting in the heated hand, whilst we stand, I stand, you float, on a network of communicating tentacles, signals sparking, pulsating, receiving. A message of nutrition, of nurture, of skin against skin and against bark. Planets are watching us as you fall asleep, and I try to stay awake, the forest far away, yet just here.
Okay, thank you. I'm aware of time and that I'm taking a bit longer than I rehearsed for, so I'm not going to share the chapter 4 just now because I have a few more things to show, just to share the exhibition itself. There's a couple more elements to the exhibition, so there's not just these 4 videos, but there's also some photographic elements, and some of them are, again, a collaboration with not quite scientists, I guess, but the science technologies. So when I was in Aska in Arctic Lapland, I noticed these beautiful lichens that grow on the trees that look like hair. And it turns out that they are very important ecologically to local reindeer that eat them when the snow is super high, super deep, like up to 1 meter and more. So they feed on them, and they're also quite a good indicator whether on the purity of air and how much pollution there is in the area. So a year later, I have asked lovely people who hosted me there to send me a clump of this lichen in post, which I later on sent on to Edinburgh University because they have this amazing scanning electronic microscope thing that they can zoom in onto the smallest details. And I asked them to do some of these scans of the lichen from the Arctic. The reason I really like lichen and I'm very interested in it is because it's a symbiotic organism, as some of you might know, and symbiosis is quite a theme for this body of work. And there's a couple of more little things to share. So this is digital collage, a detail of digital collage that for the show is printed really big, like 3 meters long and like 1.40 meters across on translucent fabrics, and then incorporated into the installation. These are digital collages, again, of drone footage being fed into 3D software that then creates these kind of distorted landscapes. And just to finish off, some photographs of the actual exhibition. So those who haven't been, Northern Photographic Centre has 7 different rooms. They're not huge, but some planning had to go into how to use the space well, working with video and photography and these very thin light boxes. So other elements that are not videos are displayed on these photographic stands, and there are photographs that I made during the residency and for some time afterwards as well. And one room is dedicated to text specifically, text and the publication that I have made, and I'll finish with this publication here that basically compiles all the texts that have been written for this project, and some of them didn't make it into the videos, and in some of them they are the kind of overhead text being read out by me. But because they grew to be a thing of their own and a bit more independent, I then self-published this small book or booklet with texts and some of the images from the exhibition, and a commissioned text by a Glasgow-based artist and writer, Rosie Roberts, who has responded to my work and kind of wrote a very beautiful piece about how we communicated, both of us being new mothers during the pandemic, and our communication was emails and WhatsApp audio messages, and we have actually never met in person to discuss this. Yeah, and the publication is stocked at Street Level Photo Works if you were interested to see or buy. And I will say thank you, keep in touch with me if you want. There's different channels, and I will stop sharing my screen now and hand it back to Malcolm.
Thank you very much, Kotryna. That was really enriching to see all of that. I loved the way that you used images and short excerpts of the videos across Instagram over a period of time. I mean, this work, let's say the genesis of this work may have been in early 2020s, but it's just short of 2 years really, for, you know, and that's how long it takes for work to come to fruition. And you've managed to do that by garnering support through a multitude of sources, including Create Scotland, Hope Scott Trust, and others. Too many to even mention. It's a long process and a long journey, and it's very deserving because it's a very rich work, I think, and I'd love to get to see it if anybody has a bus and wants to do that journey. Drive from Glasgow across Denmark, Sweden to Finland. Let's do it. We do hope that we can see it, if not in Glasgow, then definitely in Scotland. I think that's almost a certainty that there'll be a demand to see the work then. I should mention, you're making apologies for your baby crying, who he probably realises that you're doing something and he's, you know, wanting attention. But when you went to Oulu in early 2020, you were expecting your baby, and when your son was born, you named him Timo, and that's a Finnish name. Was that because you were so kind of taken by your experience of Finland that you gave him a Finnish name, or you just liked it?
I think both. I think definitely, if one can simplify, I would say Finland is probably one of my favorite places I've been to, and I intend to go back again. And Timo as a name was at first a joke, because everybody who was male and who I met in Finland seemed to be called Timo. I think it's a very popular name. So I was making these jokes with Taya, the producer from the gallery, and she said, no, there's other names, but Timo, yes, it's quite popular in certain generations. And then I like the sound more and more. So I feel like he's part Finnish.
Yeah, okay. Very good. Okay, well, we'll come back to you very shortly, Kotryna. So thank you again for that wonderful presentation. So if you'd like to evaporate temporarily, and we'll bring Lasse onto the screen here. Hi.
Hi again.
Hello again. So it's been not a couple of months since you were in Glasgow. You were in Glasgow in early November of 2021, because you were undertaking the first part of your residency, which was the reciprocal aspect of the residency that Kotryna undertook in Oulu. And we'll hear a bit more about that in a little while, but we do look forward to welcoming you back. So Lasse also works with different media, photography and video, and I guess you're kind of walking a kind of tightrope between the documentary medium and the conceptual. The connection of human beings to the environment is very much at the core of what you do. A couple of mentions of your track record. Your previous solo exhibitions include Atmo Relational, if that's how you pronounce it, I beg your pardon if not, which was on view at Gallery Forum Box in Helsinki in 2017. But a bit more recently, the most beautiful nuclear power plants in Europe was shown at Kaunas Photo Festival in Lithuania. And actually, it slowly came back to me that I think I seen that at the time as well. It's been shown in a number of other places, that particular work, and I think you might show some images and tell us a little bit about that project as well. Your solo exhibition, Crossings, has been seen at the Finnish Museum of Photography in Helsinki in 2020. It travelled to Lahti and to the Photography Centre in Tampere in Finland as well. Lots of other places that work has been shown, but just last year, some of your works have been seen around Finland in the exhibition Whose Nature? And that was shown at Jyväskylä Art Museum, Turku Kunsthal, and the Northern Photography Centre also in Oulu. So your more recent outing, however, was very, very close to where we are now. And that was at Hippolyte Gallery in Helsinki. And that was I think that just finished last month, if I'm not mistaken.
10 days ago.
Yeah, okay. So sections from Crossings are on exhibition in Forever Changes, a selection of that work which you can see at street level at the moment. But I'll pass it over to you, Lasse, to give us a lowdown on your work and share your insights with us. Thank you.
So, as I said, my name is Lasse from Helsinki, and I'm going to, first of all, I would like to welcome you and to join us in this journey. And what I would like to welcome you to is actually the Anthropocene. So in 2016, the International Geological Congress decided that the humanity has now, or the globe has now passed on to an era, a geological era, after the Holocene, which was till now the prevailing to the era where humanity has affected the globe so much that there is no turning back, and that the planet Earth is being affected by the human activities more than anything else, and in a ways that cannot be returned. And this, one of the starting points, is now considered to be the start of the nuclear era, like in the 1940s, 50s, when the first nuclear or atomic bombs were developed and launched, and as a result also the nuclear energy was developed. So it was used both in war, but also in peaceful action to create energy. And myself as a photographer and working also with video, and having a background with journalism, documentarism, but also cinema and more creative arts. I was interested in dealing with this topic and how is the humankind affecting our planet. And one of the things that I wanted to work with, as from this introduction, the nuclear power is very much present in this new epoch, let's say, and it's also, as we're talking about environmental issues, as we all know, global warming is a huge threat at the moment. So what comes to the global warming, one of the biggest issues is, or the main issue is like how energy is produced on the planet. So with a colleague of mine who is a writer and studied aesthetics, Antti Kiuru, we started to think about what is the reason why nuclear power is seen in certain places. Now I'm talking mainly about Western countries and especially Europe. Why is it seen as a positive solution for this, and why is it why in certain countries, just like in Sweden, Germany, for instance, they have decided to shut down all their nuclear power plants. So we started working together on this, him, my colleague, writing, and me photographing on this series of photographs, which is called The Most Beautiful Nuclear Power Plants in Europe. And one of the let's see if this will work better. Yes. One of the starting points was that, okay, in Central Europe, in Western Europe, the nuclear power plants are in many places where they're actually seen by local people. They're just like in the middle of villages or very nearby towns and so on. And there is there's lots of things going on. People actually see the power plants in their daily life. Of course, because of the risks, the power plants, just like in this image in northern Spain, they're surrounded by some natural areas, because obviously they need to be either by sea or by a river, so that there is enough cooling water for the plant. And therefore, in many cases, they are in very picturesque, pretty sites, but still oftentimes in places where the area surrounded by is either used for farming or there are villages and towns. Whereas Finland used to be, now the situation has changed a bit, but it used to be for very many years one of the only European countries to construct more nuclear power, whereas Italy had abandoned, Austria had abandoned in the first place the nuclear energy for it being too risky and so on. This is from Scotland, from Torness, near Edinburgh. And in Finland, the power plants, because it's such a waste country, the power plants are not actually visible to people. Even if you live very nearby, there's so much forest, there's so much water and so on, so you can't really see the power plants. So it's like, the idea was that, okay, is Finland one of the only countries which wants to construct more nuclear power, because they're kind of out of sight, out of mind, even if they are somehow near. Whereas like in this case, in France, in the Rhone Valley, all the area just around the power plant is very much in use, and people who live there see that every day. This is one of the rare sites where, this is from Finland, Loviisa power plant. This is one of the rare places where you can actually see the power plant when you go on an island across the water. As you can see elsewhere, it's full of forest. So that was one of the projects which was dealing with both the landscape and the environment, and then the human effect, and also kind of trying to depict how the contrast between kind of industrial romanticism, and then at the same time, as we think of nuclear power, it's kind of the miracle that humanity has been able to create energy out of literally almost nothing, kind of invisible. And then at the same time, there are huge risks. At the same time, it has to be constructed in places where there is sort of a risk zone, so there would not be too much big cities in the vicinity. And then at the same time, it should not be too far from the big cities, because obviously you need to transport the energy to the cities, and the further the distance is, the more or the less it's useful. So that was one project that I've been working for we started on 2014, and now, as I mentioned, that one of the starting point was that Finland is still constructing this new power plant, and now I have the big news to announce you. It's called Olkiluoto, third reactor to Olkiluoto. It was decided by the government in 2002, and the construction started in 2004. And now, just in the change of year 2021, 2022, the power plant has been finally finished, and now it's on. It still doesn't produce electricity to the main grid, but in the coming months, it's supposed to start to do that. So one of the points to think about, to consider, is that now we have like about 20 years old, if the original decision and the plans were from 2002. So now we have about 20-year-old new power plant, which just have been constructed, but with 20-year-old technology. And then we can think about how much the other forms of renewable energy, for instance, went forward in this 20 years. And of course, it costed like 9 billion euros, but that's a different thing. So that's one earlier project. Now I'm going to show you two more, which are quite recent, but also something that I've been working on several years. So this is aluminium landscape, and I've been working now for about 5-6 years regularly in Iceland, and staying in a residency, usually from 1 to 2 months or up to 3 months per year when possible. And I'm very much interested in the connection of human and nature, and how we change it and how we don't change it. So this photo series, so it's diptychs, so 2 images from the same location, and this deals with aluminium. production, which is the biggest manufacturing in Iceland. And interestingly enough, Iceland is actually the country which uses the most energy per capita on the planet. And why is that? It's not because Icelanders leave their windows open. Okay, it's also a bit because of that in the winter, but mainly it's because thanks to the glaciers and thanks to and therefore the rivers, and then the geothermic, the volcanic ground, the geothermic energy that is available. The country has so many sources of, so to say, well, at least fossil-free energy, green energy, as if you want. And therefore, Iceland has been attracting aluminium factories, which is one of the industries that consumes energy the most. And this is only because of the possibility of creating CO2-free energy by constructing dams and other geothermal power plants. So this is Gullfoss, one of the main attractions, the biggest waterfall in Europe, and amazing site. And the story is that a local farmer's daughter in the 1920s said that, as already 100 years ago, some foreign businessmen wanted to construct a power plant there, a hydropower plant. And luckily for Iceland, and probably for all of us, it didn't happen, because nowadays, as tourism is the main business in Iceland, and most of the country lives out of tourism, this amazing waterfall has been saved thanks to this activist who had said that this young lady who had said that she would jump into the waterfall if the power plant would be constructed, and she fought for all her life, and the power plant is not there. The river is still running free, and so is the waterfall. So in this series, I'm playing with sort of the idea of showing the possibilities of landscape and what is there and what could be there, and therefore and so on. And why I wanted to especially show this is that if you look at this image, and in case you have seen the exhibition Forever Changes at street level photo works at the moment, you might recognize there's the Swedish photographer's Helen Schmidt's work, which deals with similar, or which actually has a photograph of the same location as I have, but I turned it into a diptych and covered the other image, covered the landscape with some aluminium foil. And so this is one of the, this is the biggest dam in Europe, which was constructed only to produce energy for one aluminium power plant in the highlands of Iceland in the northeast. And I'm showing kind of the results of what has happened when still producing green energy, which obviously is a good has good intentions, but it still doesn't come without a cost for the environment. So this aluminum landscape and also this series that I'm going to show you a couple of images of the black hole. These both are projects that I've been working on for several years, but now, as Malcolm just mentioned, just over the past couple of months in Helsinki, I had my latest solo show, which was called The Black Hole, and I had these two series there. So that's why I'm going to show you some very recent work. So this black hole is about mining and how humankind is every year molding and moving about 80 million tons of material on the planet, and most of it is a consequence of separation of minerals and metals. And there's an estimate that the geological estimate that 95% of Earth's surface has been modified by human, in one way or another, and in many places in several ways. So, and mining and use of natural resources is obviously the main reason for that. So here in this series, I've been kind of juxtaposing both current mines and open pits and so on, and then just like in this series, this is from Las Médulas in Spain, which is a Roman age gold mine. So it dates about 2,000 years ago, and there the Romans, who were clever at their time to use some water to distinguish the gold from the ore. So they have cut these mountains in this kind of shape, and nowadays it's a UNESCO World Heritage, Cultural Heritage site, which is of course a bit controversial. How can a mine become a cultural heritage site, and will that happen also for the mining sites of today? And now I'm going to show you a couple of images of the work called Crossings, which is on view in the gallery in Glasgow, part of this Forever Changes exhibition. So as mentioned earlier, I've been working in Iceland for several years, and one of the things I'm very interested in is how what is happening to the glaciers. I went to Iceland first time in 2009, just as a tourist, to go around to see all the sites and so on. And then this, what I'm showing right now, was what I was expecting to see, and I found it. Turquoise water in a glacier lagoon with floating icebergs, beautiful views, and so on. And when I returned there, with more and more growing concern on what's happening to the environment and with the climate, in 2016, I had an idea to go visit the same places where I had been as a tourist 7 years earlier. And little by little, I realized that actually there has been a huge change. Only in 7 years I could notice it. When I started, for instance, most of these images are from the biggest glacier in Europe, Vatnajökull, and as it sits on a mountaintop, and then there are these glacier rivers, glacier tongues, as you can see in this image, that flow towards the sea level. When I was walking from the place where you could drive and then start walking towards the end of the glacier tongue, I realized that only in 7 years that I was there exactly at the same month, exactly at the same time of year, the distance was longer. So I had a physical feeling that, all right, something has changed, because I was thinking of how to show, as a photographer, a videographer, how to show that there is a change happening there, as we know from all the scientific discussion and studies that there are going on. And I want to stop on this image and think about the first glacier image that I showed you. And this is kind of the shocking revelation, what I discovered, besides that I could physically feel that the distance is bigger, the glacier tongues are thawing and retrieving. So there has been, since 2000, 15% of the glacier areas of Iceland have retrieved, and for me personally, the even more shocking revelation was that if you look from above, as these are all aerial images, the glaciers are not that white, bright, reflective anymore, but actually thanks to the human, well, it's a combination of human effects and natural geological effects, because, as you know, Iceland is such a volcanic country, so there's regularly volcanic eruptions. So there's all the time ash, or time to time there is ash coming and coming down, sitting on the ice. But most of this is black coal, black carbon, which is the result of everything that we have been burned. We as a humanity have been burned since the Industrial Revolution, and thanks to the global world and turning atmosphere, most of it end up on the northern hemisphere, especially in the Arctic areas. So this is a glacier as photographed from above, and all this black material that you see is a mix of geological, natural processes, but mainly what we have been burning, coal, etc., carbon into the atmosphere, and which have landed there. And now, thanks to the warming temperatures, of course, there is more and more thawing in the ice, and on the layers you will see more and more of this revealing. And the danger is that since it's black, it doesn't reflect. There's the albedo effect, so it doesn't reflect the sun rays and the heat rays back to the space. So it kind of, it's a vicious circle. So the more there is black, the more it will melt. So there were some photos. Now I'm going to show you just very shortly a clip, because it's also the work also consists of videos that I've been collaborating with an American composer, musician, sound artist, Gabriel Gold, and we've been working together. I've been doing the videography and he's been working on the soundtracks and has recorded the soundscapes inside the glacier caves, whereas I've been shooting videos on the top of the glaciers from the air. So in the end, I just want to, as you probably know by now, there's the Forever Changes exhibition at the street level PhotoWorks in Glasgow, which is still open for more than a month. And then next, my work, especially this video work, will be part of this Hughes Nature at Mikkeli Art Museum in Finland, opening in March. And here's my contact. Please stay in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Lasse.
Sorry for taking such a long time.
Very interesting. Quite a range of work. Now you will be back in Glasgow, we hope, quite soon to undertake the second part of your residency, which will continue with a thematic that does drive your work, which has got to do with climate change. I kind of love the complementary aspects of both of your practices, the kind of power of the representational in your work, Lasse, and the poetics of the ethereal in yours, Kotryna. You know, that they're kind of interlinked and very, very interesting indeed. But I think we're going to bring Antti in at this point. Antti is the director of the Northern Photographic Centre. So welcome, Antti.
Thank you very much, Malcolm. This is like really good and interesting, and I'm a bit honored also possibility to open up the collaboration between Northern Photographic Centre and street level photography works. So this is actually, I have been seeing the works of Lasse during the years, and now with the Kotryna we have been building up exhibition in our gallery, and it has been quite astounding to see how photography or the approach of photography is based, like this lens-based term is quite good, because if you consider photography as in the context of arts and technology, it started from chemistry and physics in the 17th and 18th century and turned to more portable means on the last 100 years, with from large formats to smaller frames and more movable cameras. And now we have entered during the last 20 years to digital age, from the bulky cameras to moving cameras that artists can use and operate. And it's really interesting how the point of view of the image making is changing from human level to microscopy and the drones and satellite imageries. So I mean, the expansion of this technology is like expansion of human capabilities. It actually becomes visible really well on the photographic and lens-based art practices. And somehow I really like the combination of the presentations, because Kotryna's approach of dealing with this kind of subtle subject and things from the angles of care and this kind of interlinking this kind of human social emotional behaviors, and then also this becoming to the core of the natural and climate change and cell structures and stuff was really interesting and opening. And I was really fascinated about the way how these photogrammetries and 3D imaginaries, like hacked 3D spaces, are actually opening up the images differently. And same was with the Lasse's approach, that you actually change from the contemporary point of view of the camera to the drones, and then you use them more creative way, and then deal subjects that are really combined to our everyday reality and somehow connected to the new materialistic terminology, in that sense that materialism, like a nuclear power, or material like nuclear energy and buildings, and then mining, different levels of mining and materialities dealing with it that are quite connected to us and emotional, and they can express the change really well. And it doesn't have to be so it comes from the documentary side of the photography, but it becomes way more clearer and to the point in this kind of approaches. So maybe I have like a question for you both, that when you have been like evolving as an artist and art practitioners and starting to use these kind of new technologies, that how do you feel this kind of a change, and how do you feel maybe the becoming technologies and how it fits to your practice? That what is your like maybe next steps or future steps with this kind of approaches? That do you broaden your scope to more I don't know, like Kotryna is going to microscopy, and I really like in the exhibition of ours the way that there was these lullabies that you can hear and see this caring, and then you go to the quite deep to the core of the chemistry of the cell and oxytocin production and things. So I mean, the variety is really vast. So how do you deal and how do you combine these things, and how do you feel about the change and new technologies nowadays? Quite broad question, but I think that you both can answer it quite well.
Lasse?
Thanks for so you can complete that. Basically, I would say that myself, I'm not really so much technology orientated, or so that's quite interesting. That, well, actually in this latest exhibition, most of the images have been shot on a medium format film camera, so which is kind of nowadays it's very old style way of making images in a way. But yeah, I would say that of course there are so many possibilities now, and I have also been involved in microscopic imagery and this kind of things, and I'm very, like, personally, I just, as a hobby, I'm like very interested in images from the space. So this kind of stuff. So there are so many, yeah, I would say that there are so many ways of making images or working with images that for me it's not really the main point. And at some point I know that I was a bit worried about that, okay, if I start to use excessively drone images, because I find it very interesting way to depict something from a new angle. But now, is it anymore a new angle? Because everybody is using it. All the TV series are like full of drone images and so on. So what does it do for my if I'm developing a style in my art or something, and that's something completely different compared to the images that I've shot on very grainy medium format film. So, but then I just decided that no, it's the topic that matters. It's what I want to talk about that matters. So I can actually use all of these ways, as well as like one more traditional black and white photo that I did myself, camera obscura, or then drone images, or any new way that there can be at the moment.
And maybe you answered the question, because I've been really astounded about the palette of the photography, in that sense that people are not sticking to so much maybe nowadays to certain technological frame, but that they can move in between these kind of new technologies and older technologies. But of course you have to master them or train yourself or get knowledge. So that's actually really astounding and interesting for me, that you can actually find your way to express your themes or your research with the arts with these methods. So yeah, you actually answered the question quite well. Thank you.
Could I just acknowledge a question from Frank McElhinney, if that's okay with you, Kotryna? Yeah, because he does ask about both of you using drones, and he does ask for you if you could say something about what attracts you to the aerial perspective. I think in part that has been answered, but you can come back to that. But there is something, and it's that word synergy again, between the macro, which gives you the bird's eye view, to the zoning in to the micro, which is really fascinating in both of your work. Do you have anything to add to that, Kotryna? Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that might answer both questions, actually, Anti's and Frank's. In terms of the drone itself, maybe isn't that interesting to me. But what was interesting to me was the difference in scale. So going from vast, huge, perhaps invisible even, to really small and also invisible. And that partly comes from some reading I do about ecological awareness. I absolutely love reading Timothy Morton, who is like eco-philosopher, and he writes amazing books about being ecologically aware and what is nature. He claims that nature doesn't exist. And some of my ideas come from being influenced by him. He talks about the change of scale as a thing that can disorientate us and therefore make us feel more present and therefore more aware of our surroundings. And that's where we can start talking about this radical care or radical intimacy with other species, and potentially reverse some of the processes we have started on the planet many years ago. So in a way, this kind of scale thing is a tool to kind of go, whoa, you're getting from somewhere far away to somewhere close, and then back out again. And then maybe you look at the surroundings slightly differently. It's kind of slightly, you can feel like this if you haven't slept enough, for example, or potentially did some drugs or something. But it's a very good ecological awareness tool, basically, for me.
Yeah. Okay, so we're way over time in the recognised term of time. John, who's doing the controls, does have to go about 8 o'clock here, so we will be drawing this to a close. I'm just going to ask people if you have any quick and salient questions you would like to put to Kotryna and Lasse, or indeed Ante, before we go. Now, this will remain up on Facebook, so it may be the case that the artists may respond quickly to questions later on so that the conversation continues. This will also be clipped and go up onto our YouTube channel as well as a resource and a watch back. Do you have anything, any comments or questions of one another? Kotryna, Lasse? No? You met in Helsinki
We
recently.
did actually.
Yeah.
I managed to see probably one of the last days of Lasse's exhibition, and we had lunch, and I met Lasse's dog.
Yeah, good.
Yeah,
good.
so I'm glad we did that, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in Scotland whenever you come.
Yes.
Assistance to.
And it's a great thing because we actually discovered that we had met several years ago in Lithuania at a photo festival. So like, you're you. I know you.
Yeah, we have met before, but it took us a little moment to realize that. We met in Nida Photography Symposium.
Yeah. So maybe Nida in the future, Kotryna, could be a magnet to bring LT Scotland and Finland together again, eh?
And that's my dream.
Yeah, absolutely. So any further plans, Auntie, with the exhibition? Is there anything coming up that you can like to make us aware of?
Well, we have this 35-year-old anniversary exhibition coming on the autumn, but we are quite active, so most likely we will also post on Facebook and cross-post on with different channels. Northern Photography Network is activating again after the corona, so most likely there's going to be more action and collaborative approaches on the end of the year. And we are actually really delighted to be as hosting of Kotryna's exhibition. It has been really nice and good in many ways, and I hope that we can continue collaboration with you too. So this has been quite fruitful for all of us, for the artist and as an organizational perspective too. So I'm glad about that. Things are going forward, and the northern areas are connecting again. Good.
Absolutely. You have to keep these things going and have staying power, I think, for the results to be seen. When I first visited a few years ago, it was just the early days of Oulu considering a bid to become, is it European capital or city of culture?
Cultural capital, yes.
Which you have actually got, not you personally, but the city. So that's great news for the city, and hopefully Northern Photographic Centre has contributed to that significantly.
Yes, it of course develops possibilities for the artist and the organization. So I'm really interested to see what the future lies, how it evolves, and how we can actually build it up further. So most likely we will meet again and do collaboration on many levels.
Absolutely. So on that note, I think we will say goodbye to the audience. Thanks everyone for joining again.